Good morning. This is Reverend Juan Enrique Toro greeting you on this 4th day of July, the Independence Day, contemplating our message, Our Ultimate Freedom. Wow, what a great time to be together. As I was contemplating the idea of freedom today, I remembered back to a time when my brother and I attended an outdoor concert in which they had different artists coming through. Beautiful sunny day in the summer, lots of music. You remember those days. So Richie Havens comes on and he sings his song Freedom. And if you haven't heard his rendition of that, just invite you to ask your smart speaker to play Richie Havens' Freedom. Oh, man, what a powerful rendition. Long intro, just a guitar and some congas. And then he starts out, freedom, freedom. And he kind of exaggerates a little bit. He says, freedom, freedom. And he sings, and that day when he sung, his soul filled the entire audience there. And I remember just being exhilarated, crying and feeling vibrant. And of course, in his voice was a lot of hurt, was a lot of pain. The pain of suffering, racism, being a black man in the United States, being suppressed, overlooked, invisible. And also in his words was hope. So you got the guitar, the congas, freedom, freedom. It's a powerful, powerful moment. As I remember that, I began to write this message. And I guess we need to ask ourselves some basic questions as we contemplate the idea of freedom. What does freedom mean? Who is free? What are we free from? And at what cost is freedom acquired? Because in our worldly concept of freedom, there are often sacrifices that we need to make. So there is a passage, kind of a famous passage, New Testament. Paul is writing, Paul, the evangelist, he's going out, he's writing and he's preaching and he's doing all kinds of things. And he writes this, it's a section entitled Slaves of Righteousness. And he gives us a clear guidance on what freedom is for us today. He says, what then? Should we sin because we are not under law but under grace? By no means. Do you not know that if you present yourselves to anyone as obedient slaves, you are slaves of the one whom you obey, either of sin, which leads to death, or of obedience, which leads to righteousness. But thanks be to God that you, having once been sins of slave, have become obedient from the heart to the form of teaching to which you were entrusted, and that you, having been set free from sin, have become slaves of righteousness. Romans 6:15 through 18. So here, Paul is actually laying out a path to freedom. I'm going to unpack it with you for just a moment here. Because, Paul had a basic theology about salvation, and he believed that salvation was received and not achieved. We were saved by grace. And that's why he begins this section, should we sin because we are not under law but under grace? Because if everything comes by grace, then why bother? Right? And he says, absolutely not. Then he presents us with this situation which, to the people who heard him speak or read his words, I'm sure understood perfectly. We need to unpack it a little bit historically. He talks about people who present themselves to become slaves. And in those days, if you got into some terrible debt, just life-choking debt, one of the options that you had was going to your debtor and saying, I will become your slave for X amount of time to pay off my debt. So I'm enslaved to you for a year, for 5 years, for 10 years, whatever it is. You come to an agreement, and during that time, that person is your master and you are their slave to pay off the debt. And so that was a common thing. What was not common, of course, is what he goes on to say, which is that you have a choice. You are either going to be a slave of sin, he says, missing the mark, hello, which eventually leads to death, or you're going to be a slave to obedience, which leads to righteousness. And that we have a choice. So he calls us slaves of righteousness. Why? Because we have come into an understanding of the heart of the form, he says, to the teachings to which you were entrusted. You were given the teachings. So Paul here is setting out the structure for our message here today. And I think that there are three key ideas that we need to contemplate, unpacked through what Paul is saying here, at least what I perceive to be. Number one, we need to recognize the shape of our slavery. Very important. Number two, we need to realize the scope of our cosmic unity. I put the word cosmic in there because we could just say unity because unity, but the shape of our cosmic unity sounds a little more poetic. And number three, to live daily out of our new identity. So let's take these in turn. Number one, recognize the shape of your slavery. Paul is saying that there are basically one of two ways to go. You're going to be a slave of sin, or you're going to be a slave of righteousness. Obedience is what he calls it. What he's basically saying is that you're going to make something your master. Something is going to be your God. And this may be a little odd way to talk about it, but all of us have declared something to be of major priority, importance, ultimate importance in our life. Because no one is without a God, whatever you call it. It is the master in your life. Everyone lives for something. Might be just survival. Might be security. Might be to have some purpose or some significance. Everyone wants to feel valuable, that their life matters in some way. And so one of the ways for us to come to understand what our true north is, what our master is, what our God is that when difficulties come up, like we've been going through this pandemic and all that, we ask ourselves the question, when difficulties come up, what is essential? What is ultimate for us? And we're talking about more than beliefs, more than theology, more than religion, more than spiritual orientation here. We're talking about core idea of what is important to you. So you may choose, for example, career. Career is most important. Family, achievement, approval. All these are options. Personal independence, really important, that I feel that I can do what I want to do. Or maybe it's the opposite. Maybe you want to have people depend on you. It's really important that people know that they can count on you. Ultimate importance for you. Money, hello, money. Romance, attractiveness, hello. But you're going to live for something. That's what Paul is saying. You're going to live for something, and it really behooves us to look at it, because we oftentimes don't look at it in this way, but it does become our master. It is controlling us. For example, during this pandemic, I discovered that family is my ultimate focus. When I thought about the situations that I was facing, it wasn't so much about me personally, or career, or money. It was keeping my family safe. That was first and foremost. Now it behooves us all to do some introspection and get clear on what our master is. And one of the ways that we understand that is that we see sometimes good things happen to us, but then we take some of those good things and we make it ultimate. In my case, for example, I've made family top, number one. All right? And there's a test. There's a test that you can do to help yourself understand what is ultimate for you. For example, If you find yourself getting angry, let's suppose some good has been blocked from you, okay? Some basic good. Something's blocked. You're not going to feel very good. You're going to get angry. You're going to get a little tense, a little stressed maybe. But if something blocks the ultimate good, right? There's rage. You blow up. I mean, anger goes to its ultimate limit because it's threatening your God. It's threatening the essential nature of what you believe to be the most important. Anger, very important. It becomes rage, blow up. Look at fear. If something good is threatened in your world, you might get worried, right? But if something is threatening that ultimate thing, wow, you get paralyzed with fear. Anxiety becomes your middle name because that thing is being rocked. So fear goes to the ultimate because that ultimate thing is being threatened. Sadness. If you lose a good thing, you might grieve, you feel loss, right? But if you lose the ultimate thing, you feel like throwing yourself off a bridge. I remember once upon a time I was so focused on my career. In those days, career was my north, was my God. Career was my number one. That's changed now, but it was career. And suddenly all the meaning and purpose and significance of my career fell out, and I was left with nothing, and I truly went into a depression because I didn't know where I was standing. Right? I felt like jumping off a bridge. Anger. If you're a recovering alcoholic or drug addict, and you take away the bottle from the alcoholic, boy, they're not just going to get angry, they're going to rage. They feel that their number one relationship is with the bottle. That's why some people describe substance addiction as a relationship disorder, because you put all of your eggs in that carton of the bottle. That is the most important. You take the bottle away, that person loses everything. So that's what we're talking about today. And Paul is telling us that no one is free. No one is free. We're going to make a choice, one way or another. So, let's close with that little part and just recognize that we're not free. We're making a choice to be enslaved to something that may edge God out, ego, or something that affirms our relationship as a spiritual being. So let's move on to the second question. Realize the scope of your cosmic unity. Well, we could talk all day about that. What are we free from? We're free from the ego. The senseless and ceaseless identification with emotions, with things, with circumstances that really do not relate or identify or point to the essential essence of who we are. We edge God out, ego, right? The ceaseless identification of things that really do not support our ultimate identity. And so our whole spiritual understanding is wrapped up in this second point. The reason you come to unity is to remember your cosmic unity, to remember your oneness with God. We remember when they asked Jesus, what's the most important commandment? You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, your mind, and your soul, right? He says, put God first, number one. And I'm having a message here from my Bible teacher from ministerial school, Frank Judici, God bless his soul. He said, the whole problem in the Old Testament, idolatry. Idolatry, right? The nation of Israel was constantly identifying with the Baal gods, with deviating, murmuring, coming back to the one true God. Idolatry was the main problem. What's the main solution? Coming back to the one true God. And of course, we have the example of Viktor Frankl, who wrote his book, Man's Search for Meaning. And he said, as a concentration camp survivor, everything can be taken away from a man, let's add a woman, but one thing, the last of the human freedom, to choose one attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. Everything can be taken away except the power of choice. And so as we contemplate this question, realize the scope of our cosmic unity, we see that we are not victims of circumstance. We are not victims of the world. We're not stuck in a situation. We can choose in any moment to allow that freedom to express. And of course, unity is a fantastic place to do that. Somebody wrote some affirmations recently. I loved it. I copied them here. It says, I let freedom ring in my life today and every day. I am blessed with the gift of choice. And with each thought I choose joy, love, and ease. I freely let go of any thoughts of limitation, knowing that they do not serve me and an abundant life awaits me. My heart swells with gratitude as I recognize that I am free, I am unlimited, I am free, I am unlimited. Knowing this, my Christ light shines brightly, and I am a beacon of freedom in the world, and so it is. Bam. We could talk all day about that, but really coming to Unity Church every Sunday is the best training in understanding our cosmic unity, and our challenge is to realize the scope of it, the depth of it, the truth of it. And then, of course, to embody it, right? To embody it. And that's where we go to our third point, which is to live daily out of our new identity. If we come to realize that we're slaves, we're going to make a choice one way or another. It's either going to be the ego, it's going to be the Christ mind, the kingdom consciousness, the unitive awareness, whatever you want to call it. We know that we need to embody it. And one of the badass gurus in India, a guy named Sadhguru, says, your hand is useful because it goes where you want it to go. It's useful because it does what you want it to do. Similarly, your mind is only useful if it goes where you want it to go. Your mind is only useful if it goes where you want it to go. So what are you choosing, right? What are you embodying? What are you identifying with? It's a basic idea here. How does this work? The story of St. Augustine comes to mind. You heard this story maybe. St. Augustine, before he came into his awareness, his awakening, his spirituality, whatever you want to call it, he was a ladies' man. He was famous for being a lover of women, and he had a bunch of women, right? Then he comes into truth. He decides to become a priest, right? He's eventually becomes Saint Augustine, right? But of course, he's walking around in the same world that he grew up in. And so one day he's walking down the street in his, priest garb and all that. And he runs into one of his old lovers, one of his favorite lovers. And she sees him and comes up to him and is trying to make motions to attract him. Maybe go have a little fling up there in the room. And he greets her, politely says, thanks but no thanks, right? And excuses himself. And he walks on. And she says to him, Augustine, hey, it's me. Maybe thinking that he didn't recognize who she was. So she says, hey, Augustine, it's me. And he says, I know, but it's not me. In other words, he had embodied his new truth so much that he didn't feel he was the same person. And I think that story really helps us come into an understanding of what freedom is for us. To embody it so completely that whenever you can catch that ego mind falling into victimhood, falling into anger, sadness, fear, all of these emotions, that we catch it, that we see it, that we remember that's not who I am. That has no power over me. I can choose the way I'm going to face this situation. And of course, these ideas are all basic ideas for us in unity. Thank you, God, for that. But it's important that we remember them on this day. I think it helps us to understand we're either going to go one way or another. There's no middle ground here. There's no middle ground. We're either going to go the ego, the Christ mind. One way or the other. And that's why when we do our work, when we come into our prayer time, our meditation time, when we feel that sense of inner freedom, we embody it, we hold it, and we use it all the time. Why, just today, somebody lost a precious key. Only one copy of this key. Boy, I was mad. How could you lose the one key, right? I was having hard. Had to sit down. Had to do my work. Had to let go of the darn key. Had to open myself to a vision of this individual. As what? As a child of God. As my brother. Have I ever lost a key? I'm laughing because I don't know how many I've lost, right? Have I ever not done the right thing? Managed to find some compassion. I was able to smile. So that's all right, we'll figure it out, right? So we need to embody it. We need to become it. Our new identity. So when that anger, or when that fear, or when that sadness comes knocking, hey, it's not me. I'm not home. You're talking to a new individual. I am the Christ in expression. Little freelance interpretation of our daily word for today. As I do my work in the world for freedom, I remember these quotes. Charles Fillmore says, prayer makes each person a master in the realm of creative ideas. Our dominion is over our own thoughts, emotions, and passions. Our dominion. No person, situation, or circumstance has power over me. I utilize my divine powers of strength and release to keep on course and free myself from habits detailing my spiritual evolution. I recognize and embrace empowering beliefs. I celebrate my freedom in thoughts, feelings, words, and actions. So let's go back to those three original questions that we had. What does freedom mean? What does freedom mean? Freedom means exercising our inner power to choose and have established the Christ consciousness in us. Who is free? Those who awaken to this truth and embody it every day, those are free. What are we free from? The ego, the false self, the limited identification with things that do not point to the truth of who we are. And at what cost is freedom acquired? Here's the beauty. Freedom is free. How long does it take? As long as it takes you to go from ego to Christ mind. That's how long it takes. Could be the split second. Could be an hour, could be a day, a week, a month. Sometimes it taxes us to remember that. And so when we hear Richie Havens sing freedom, it could be a celebration of the freedom that we have chosen from ourselves by identifying with the Christ mind in us. Please remember, life is consciousness, and consciousness is life. God bless you all.